Welcome to the Empowered Team podcast. I'm your host, Kari Schneider, and I am so grateful to be here with Sandy Moll. And Sandy has such a incredible, colorful background. She is all about championing people, purpose, and prosperity. Say that fast 5 times. And has a background as a seasoned entrepreneur. You have a background in finance, you have a background in real estate. You've done all sorts of things like acquisitions, mergers, development. You've done all these things in the world that I imagine has provided you with a wealth of experience, a wealth of learnings and knowledge. So tell us a little bit more about your background because I clearly haven't done it justice based on what I know about you. So tell me a little more about who you are and how you got to where you are right now.
Well, I think you did it justice very well, so thank you. I kind of fell into the financial service arena ever since I was actually in high school. That's kind of just it kind of happened and it was easy for me. And went up through the ranks in the banking world and enjoyed it, but I always kind of felt like it wasn't all there should be. And I have a big belief that God has big plans for us all, and sometimes we don't listen. And I love the He whispers, He roars, and sometimes He hits you with the 2x4 if you don't listen. And um, my husband and I had started a few other companies on the side, and that was kind of filling some of the places that I still felt I wasn't really fulfilled at. And then the bank that we were at actually got in trouble. And the regulators put me in charge until we could sell it. And at that point, I thought, all right, this is the 2x4 moment that God's saying, hey, this isn't what I wanted you to be all. And so after that transition, I agreed to stay on for 30 days with the new ownership. And then I thought I'm going to take some time and just reflect. My husband and I at that time still had, I think we had 4 companies running at that time. So I was blessed that I didn't have to work. I still had my youngest son was still at home. And I thought, this is a time 3 kids are gone, one's in college, one's still at home. I want to spend some time really giving him that extra attention that the youngest child sometimes doesn't get. And shortly after I started staying home, I started getting phone calls and people are like, can you help us? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it's really hard when people ask for help because I know asking for help is very hard.
Yeah.
When people ask for help, it's hard to say no. And so out of that 18 years ago, almost 19, Advanced Business Solutions was born. And we are going on our 19th year now. And my husband and I sold a couple of the companies. We still have a capital company that we do lending for, primarily for real estate investors or developers. We loan out money and kind of guide and direct them if they need it. We have an operating farm, we have an event center, we have a real estate holding company, we have a commercial holding company, and then we have Advanced Business Solutions. And I spend most of my work time, which I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm blessed. I work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday about 10 to 2, and that's it. And I spend most of that with Advanced Business Solutions and our teams. So I think God went through okay, you didn't hear my whisper, you didn't hear my roar, so they hit you with the 2x4. And you get some bruises when you get hit with that 2x4 when you're not listening. But now life is just pretty, things have calmed. Things are good. I still have a few coaching clients. I've done coaching, gosh, for the last probably 40 years. And still have a few coaching clients that I feel now is at least the time that I can really give back and help others get to their point where they feel that inner peace that they're looking for.
That's amazing. So this seems like an obvious question to me, perhaps for our listeners. You've now pared things down to what seems to fit you best now. So you really pared it down. However, it seemed like it was very expanded at one point, pared it down, sold some things off. And yet still, for many people listening, they would listen and go, How does she do all that though? Because you described a holding company, an operating farm. There was one that was the um,
And I think
event
the Ram Event Center. Yeah.
event center. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking a listener would think this too. How are you doing all that? Because how are you running all that? There's probably other employees and other systems in place, and managing to keep your schedule the way you want it to be. So what does that look like for you?
Well, it has really been looking at what are the gifts that God gave me and where am I going to excel at? Um, and I'm a big believer in systems. And I'm a big believer that you can get companies where they'll kind of run on their own. Um, the event center, we actually have our youngest daughter-in-law and son actually run it. And with the hope that we're training them how to run a business, and they will eventually they will actually run it and then take it over from us and buy it from us. Um, the holding company, the real estate holding company, it kind of operates a little bit on its own. I spend maybe 10 hours a month, on that one. A lot of it is strategy or financials. ABS, again, we've got systems and processes in place where I'm a big believer that if you put the right systems and processes in place, things will run. And ironically, before we started ABS, we had a company that had several employees. We now own 5 companies and have 0 employees. And and 3 of the 5 are multi-million dollar revenue companies. Um, and we do absolutely no marketing in any of them. Uh, and I think that every time I'm on a podcast, I had one gentleman who had me on the podcast, and he's a marketing guru, and it was a little nerve wracking for me because he said, "I understand from a friend of mine, you don't do any marketing." And I said, "Well, I'm a big believer that if you really tear down and really believe that you're there to serve others and you serve them in the right way, they're your marketing." And I write a lot of thank you notes. I write a lot of green thank you notes in the form of checks for referrals. But we have grown in every one of our businesses 100% by referrals. So our main focus is, are we serving the right way? Are we serving the way that we believe we should serve?
That that really is confronting for many people who are in marketing, who are in advertising, because there's a very systemic way of doing marketing, but marketing often, unfortunately, there's lots of marketing that people expect that to be correlated to sales, and it isn't necessarily. And I've had that expectation in my business, and at any point, I always ended up going back to what had always worked, which was exactly that. It's referrals. And when you're in love with what you do or what we're offering, it really that comes across, and then people will refer. And if they didn't occur to them to refer, and you say, "Hey, I'm accepting some referrals right now if you're ever interested," then suddenly the light bulb goes off, and they're like, "Oh, I have somebody to refer to you, or you just didn't ask before. I didn't think you wanted anybody." And then all of a sudden you have referrals that may be too much, but goes back to the very first thing that I led in with about you, which is a philosophy of championing people, purpose, and prosperity.
Yes.
And that's an and, not an or.
Right.
It's putting them together. And a lot of business people, a lot of people have a hard time putting that together. People and purpose and prosperity. They really they're like, okay, we're all about the people, or we're all about our mission or our purpose, or we're all about growth and making the money. But what you've done is you've really elevated all 3 together as though these all come together. It's a package deal.
Yeah.
I find that very it's refreshing, because I think there's so many people that don't understand that that's possible. Whether society, upbringing, their business environment, or the traditions of their business or the economy teach them otherwise, they don't put those things so naturally together. And for you, it seems like second nature, that this is just how it is and how it works.
Yeah. I do believe there are companies that have specific products that probably traditional marketing is needed. You know, People probably buy Coca-Cola more because they see the great Christmas commercials for Coca-Cola. That there's a purpose there and a need there. But I think one of the clients I coach, I'm constantly saying, really look at who you're trying to serve and how you want to serve them. And I love what you said about the referrals, about asking others, because yeah, part of our standard operating procedures is constantly asking our clients, how can we serve you better? And who do you know that we can serve? And kind of wrapping it all together. Yeah, I was asked, I get asked this a lot. It's like, well, did you just immediately start making money in all your companies? And the answer is no. It takes time sometimes to get that snowball going down the hill. But I think if you're really focused on your purpose, the money comes.
Mhm.
The money comes if you're doing what God puts you on the earth to do. He takes care of the hard things in the money. And I had one new entrepreneur, and he was so worried. He goes, "Yeah, but how do I pay the bills?" I said, "The bills will get paid. The bills that need to get paid will get paid." I said, "They will." And I said, "But if you're so focused on that negative energy about, oh my gosh, this and this and this," I said, that's where your energy is. It's not in serving the people that you want to serve." And he called me about 30 days after we had a pretty in-depth conversation. He goes, I really focused on just serving, just serving. And I quit even looking at bills except for twice a month. And he goes, and you're right. Now the money is coming in and I have ample money. And so I said, well, really focus on your purpose. And we were all here to serve in some form or fashion. I mean, Kari, you're serving in an amazing way of all your listeners. And you've blessed all of us that listen to you by serving us. And you will be rewarded for doing your purpose. I'm a big believer in that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's so interesting that, I hear such a strong belief and faith that of course that's going to be the outcome. Like this, obviously that's going to be the outcome if this is my intention. And and then at the same time, I'm hearing how if I'm looking at someone's brain and going, if the question just keeps being asked, how do I pay the bills? How do I pay the bills? All the brain is seeing is don't know how, and here are bills. Basically, is what the brain's saying. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, you're asking someone to focus more on how do I serve? How do I serve
Right.
people more or better or differently or how they want to be served? And then that has the brain going, what are new ways I can serve or what are ways I can help this person or what are it's such a different emphasis for, as you said, your words were the energy that's coming through in this, the energy that's happening there. That's really, really powerful.
Right.
We focus here on this is all about self mastery for leaders, and the premise that really drives that is values. And I've heard a lot of your values just in what you've described so far. It's servant leadership. It's thinking of what you really are focusing on in your own purpose and your own mission. And um, what else do you think is very important for you or has been important for you to feel the level of fulfillment and success that you have now?
It's waking up every morning and thinking, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? And who do I serve and how? It truly, and there are some days that it's like, I just want you to sit in silence for a few hours. I'm a big, big believer that, you know, entrepreneurs, and I'm gonna put myself in that category. We're real big at going out and asking all this people for advice, constantly reading books and asking for advice and doing all this. And probably what helps my husband and I, and has helped us all the last probably 30 or 40 years, is we spend a lot of time in silence. We quit listening to what the world is telling us, and we just listen to what we know is right. And I think I value my time in silence more than anything. People laugh at me because yes, I have a cell phone, but I do not ever have my alerts on. If my phone rings, it doesn't ring out loud. It lights up. I can see it. If it's my family, I'll answer it. If it's not my family, I don't answer it. I don't look at text except for twice a day. I read my email twice a day. Um, Unless I'm having an issue with something that I'm waiting on an email, then I'll check it. But I use the tools as tools. They don't control my life. And I think probably the one thing that has escalated all of our businesses is we really truly spend time thinking, what is the purpose? And really waiting for that answer. What is the purpose of us? What is the purpose of our business? Who do you want us to serve? And it's interesting. One of the gentlemen that works with us, Advanced Business Solutions, he tells me constantly, he said, I love working with a company that your vision and your values are all about helping people. And your mission is all about how many people you can help. And he says, it's just not normal. And unfortunately, it should be normal in my life. But I think if we all just slow down a little bit, spend a little bit more time in silence, the answers come. Yeah.
When you were talking about your time in silence, what this episode will be on video, but people primarily, I think, listen on audio. And what they wouldn't have seen is that you referenced to putting your hand on your heart when you talked about being in silence. And so to me, when I hear the words while I see that mannerism or that gesture, it's saying that you're in silence and you're listening to yourself, but listening to, what does my heart say? What do I feel called to? And then right with that same conversation, you're talking about, your phone is not got any notifications that are blasting at you. It's on silent. And so what I want to have the listeners really tune into here is that you're using quiet time, you're using silence, you're using less distraction, so less noise coming in at you, less regular phone notifications. You're choosing to respond if it's something to respond to. Um, and then you reference spending time thinking and waiting for the answer that aligns with purpose. And that's something that I think so many leaders and business owners, founders, CEOs, even in leadership roles, management directors, that they do not schedule for themselves thinking time or quiet time or just no noise, no nothing. So the way you've described it is a personal practice, and yet something that we all need. None of us were designed to be inundated with information, other people's requests, technology, squeaking or yelling at us in some form or another. So what are some of the recommendations as well from you that there's the thinking time, there's the quiet time? Is there anything else that you see that people really need now in order to be really effective as leading themselves and leading others?
Well, I think the first thing would always be scheduling the quiet time. I mean, I get up in the morning, do my exercising, take my shower, and then I will sit for an hour. I'll read some scripture. May read a little bit, but then I will sit for an hour. Sometimes I journal. I'm not a big journaler. Everybody says journal. I'm not a huge journaler. It just doesn't feel me, but I'll sit there with my eyes closed. There's times periodically if I'm exhausted, yeah, I do fall asleep. And that's okay. That's what my body needed at the time. And a lot of times it's like, okay, Lord, you know, this is what I'm feeling today. Or, hey, I'm worried about this child. Or, you know, ABS is kind of hit this point, but I need to get to the next point. Or do you want me to get to the next point? Or, I'll ask a lot of questions and then I won't worry about trying to figure it out. I'll just leave them there. And it's interesting because everybody says, well, do you have a to-do list? I still use paper. I still have a to-do list. And as things pop up, I'll write them down that, okay, I need to think about this, or I need to look at this, or I need to do this. But it's really interesting to me. About 7 years ago, I noticed after my quiet time, I'd come up to my office, I'd open my to-do list. And one of my standard questions in my quiet time is, what are the top 3 things, Lord, you want me to do today? What do you want me to focus on? And most of the time I'll come away with 2 or 3. Um, but they 90% of the time, probably 99% of the time, they're on my to-do list. It's like, all right, it was a seed that was planted, or I thought about it. Okay, these are the things I need to focus on today. I think we have a tendency as humans to fill our calendar up.
Mhm.
My calendar has quiet time scheduled. The people that work with me know that my work hours now are 10 to 2, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. This is actually very unusual for me to do a podcast on a Monday. Normally, I won't do it on a Monday. Normally, it has to fall in Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Mondays and Fridays are my times. Every once in a while, there may be an exception if there is something that pops up, but usually Mondays and Fridays are my quiet days, and Sunday is always a quiet day. And some days I'll just take a walk. Some days I'll clean out the chicken coop because we live on an operating farm. Some days, there has been a day which this kind of freaked one of my kids out, that I just binge watch TV all day, and I'm not a big TV watcher. You've got to have those times that you're not feeling that pressure.
Yes. It's a level of freedom that you're describing that almost sounds kind of tempting, I would think, to a lot of people who are very disciplined. But for people who are very disciplined, they're often chasing something called freedom or something called abundance. And yet what you've just described is quite exactly that. It's freedom,
Yes.
it's abundance, it's doing what you are feeling called to do in the given moment and then going with it. And that's really powerful. Now, I want to make a connection here. So if you don't mind me asking, with your companies or kind of a collective of companies, what kind of revenue are you producing in a year? And the reason I'm asking this is not to make the focus on money or revenue, but to make the connection between.
Oh, you're frozen. We froze. You're frozen. Are you there?
Ding.
Oh, there you go.
What was the last thing I said?
You make the connection between the revenue and yeah.
Yeah, so I want to make the connection between the revenue and for people hearing that I'm working 3 days a week and it's between this hours and I have quiet time and I have thinking time and I'm choosing what I want to do in the day. And clearly realizing that you have put in the years and the hours and the work and the building, and at the same time, you're still generating systems, generating growth, generating various things in various businesses. So I want people to make that bridge. What is that like, your actual growth in your companies?
Well, if you add them together, because I'm trying to think individually, but it might be easier. We're hitting 50 million yet, but we're close.
On an yes.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is I have scheduled quiet time for many, many, many years. I am a big believer that you shouldn't chase. I, I have never chased money. And there have been days and there have been seasons of my life when I was younger that I wasn't sure how we were going to buy groceries. So it's not like money has always been there. Um, and so what I learned though is I'm not going to starve to death, but there are people in the world that do starve to death. I'm not going to not have fresh water to drink, but there are people in the world that do. And so why am I so worried about having all this food or all these clothes or all these other things when they really don't get me the peace that I want? I always think it's interesting that we're constantly chasing material things, and it's the material things that we have that cause us stress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, why do you chase things that give you stress? And I will say, my husband and we have a nice house. I mean, we do. We live on 100 some acres. We have well, four, five, 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. I mean, we have a swimming pool, a basketball court, a playground. I mean, we have a nice place, but and we did work hard to get it. But it was a matter of where are your priorities at?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this all went away today, we would be okay. And we know that. So I think it's a matter of if your priorities are constantly chasing things and somebody said, well, Sandy, you have all these things, nice house, but I'm also over 60 years old, so it's an accumulated thing. Um, but there were times when I felt almost a little tested of like, okay, I need to, Megan needs braces and I can't afford those right now. And it's like, okay, Lord, I know if you want her to have braces, the money will come. So just tell me what to do. And I give it up to you. Within a week, I had the money to buy braces. So I think it truly is letting go of control. Yeah. And listening to what's right.
Mm-hmm. You described going through some tough seasons. Um, what was that like for you? What were your circumstances where it was tougher than it is now? It was a real challenge to get through. What was that, and what was that like?
Well, my husband and I both lost our jobs and 5 million in retirement on the same day.
Wow.
Now, granted, we did have a few side things going at the time, but not a ton. Um, but I can remember the thinking of, okay, God had whispered that neither one of us were happy. We heard that little bit of a roar and we still ignored the whisper and the roar. And again, here's that 2x4. This is not where I want you to be. And I remember coming home and our oldest daughter going, well, will I be able to go to college? It's like, yeah, we don't know how this is going to work, but if that's where you're supposed to be, you're going to be there. And it, it didn't take us long to more than replace what we had lost. But it truly was giving it up to the higher power and not worrying about it. Because the reality is we still had a roof over our head. I knew that we still had food in the cupboards, even if I didn't buy groceries for 6 weeks. And we had water to drink. There really wasn't any more that was needed. And we had each other. I think if we all take a step back and go, okay, what do we really love? Most people, I love my house, but I don't love my house more than I love my family. It's like it's the old adage of is if your priorities are in order and you live towards your priorities, you're gonna be fine. And I don't know very many people that, I've heard it said, now he hasn't told me this, but I've heard it said that Warren Buffett just loves to make money. That's his passion, making money. Okay. So he loves to make money and he's good at it, obviously. But I think most people are not going to say one of my passions is making money.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you really take a slow back and say, okay, what's going to give me the most peace and joy? And normally that's being heard and being loved.
Mm-hmm. It's so simple. It's so human and so simple, is being heard and being loved. And it's this basic requirement that we all have. And that's profound. Now, you at one point were a single mom, and that was a hard stretch for you to go through. What was that like?
It was very hard. And that is probably the time that it tested it tested my ability to give things up to God. Um, because I wasn't sure whose whispers and roars I was listening to. Am I listening to my mom? Am I listening to society? Or God, is this you? It's sometimes it gets confusing because there's so much coming at you. And I think that's when it really, and that was many, many, many years ago. That's when it really, I took a step back and went, okay, I need quiet time. That's when the quiet time was implemented because there was so much saying, well, you should do this, or you need to do this, or you don't do this, you do this. And it's like, I needed the quiet time because we all know inside, even if there's things that come out of that quiet time that are scary, if I know they're the right thing, then it's just so, okay, it's the right thing, but it scares the crap out of me. But if it's the right thing, I need to do it. And you just do it. And it was extremely hard. There were a lot of days when I wasn't sure if I was going to eat dinner, but I knew the kids would, they may have, they may have chicken noodle soup, and that's okay. But it was probably the time that tested my ability to get rid of distractions more than anything. So it was a great lesson and a great time for me to really go, this is what it's supposed to be like.
It's very powerful in how you describe that and how you've continued to reference surrendering and listening to God. And for those who are not so clearly faith-based in God,
Yep.
the thing I'm hearing, that if it were not a faith-based and listening to God, it's this level of surrender that is quite literally, you've done everything that you could have done, you've done everything that you should have done, and then you release and let it be instead of be so attached to the outcome or the result because you can't control it. And this is where your faith, it sounds to me, it occurs to me like, is that you have such a practice of being able to do that. And so many people just don't, whether they are believers in God or they're not believers in God, or they are unsure if they're believers in God or not, one way or another, wherever they fall on the spectrum, they don't have the practice that you're describing of being able to put it all out there and be completely detached from the outcome which none of us know will be there or not be there, but be detached from that and trust with a level of surrender and a level of faith in that whatever is going to happen is the thing that's supposed to happen in this particular time or circumstance. And that, like, you're nodding strongly, and I'm looking at that, and it looks and it feels so freeing just watching you describe it. And you're describing it time after time and circumstance after circumstance. And this is one of those things that, if you can teach it, it would literally provide so much peace for so many people.
Yeah. It's one of the first questions when I get a call, or I was asked last week if I had any coaching slots open, um and I said, well, let's have a conversation first. Let's just have a conversation first. And I could tell he was very stressed. And I said, so you realize you have 60,000 thoughts a day, and a lot of those are the same thoughts, and your thoughts are killing you. I said, so let's just sit for a minute. I'm going to set my timer. Let's just sit for a minute and try not to think. And he goes, what? I don't know how to do that. And I said, I know it's hard. When you first start, it's hard. But if you can just maybe say, okay, here it is, and try to just not think. Yes. He said, well, you want me to meditate? Well, I have been I do transcendental meditation, not regularly, but I went through the courses, and I don't even call it meditation. I call it just having that time to get rid of everything else. And I think some people are they're chasing things constantly for that peace. So it's like, the peace can be anywhere. You just have to get rid of distractions,
Mhm.
and then you have peace. And we're blessed in the United States that we're not in a war zone. It may be hard, for a lot of our military people that are on bases and war zones to have that quiet time. I get that. And it's hard for young mothers. I was a young mother with little kids and seeking out quiet time to the point of I would get up an extra 30 minutes early just to have the awake quiet time. But it's interesting because I think we all are chasing peace and joy, and we already have it.
Mhm.
We just don't access it. And
Yeah.
it's just sad. Now I will tell you that little guy that just got in, that gives me peace and joy too. That little
Yeah, she's coming in to check in on me. It's my little pumpkin. It is. It's you. What you're describing is this chasing of peace and joy rather than discovering what's already there or seeking what we're already exposed to but not present to.
Yep.
And
Yes.
um
Yes.
and it's a matter of training ourselves how to find it in the now instead of searching and seeking, and something beyond us is what's going to give us the peace or the joy. And it's the very thing that you just described with the thinking time, asking people who are thinkers,
Yeah.
the majority of us, to just stop thinking for 1 minute. Just let your brain be quiet for 1 minute. Whether you want to call it quiet time, meditation, discovery, whatever you want to call it, but just not thinking for a minute. And it's the epitome of being instead of doing. And
Yes.
people don't think of thinking as doing because they want to put a physical action to it. But when someone's
Out.
constantly thinking and they're constantly in their head, they're busy being a doer, and making their worth or their value based on performance, which happens to be in the form of thinking in that moment. So it's a performative world instead of being able to just be in existence without the thoughts or the actions or the transactions making me feel better than
Yeah.
what I'm in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's perfect. And I for this young man, I said, okay, if you're struggling, just focus on your breathing. I mean, we all hear that. Focus on your breathing. Because if you focus on your breathing, or, my husband he does this. So he focuses on, his finger twiddling thing if he struggles being quiet. But for most of us, if you focus on your breathing, it does quiet. I mean, it's scientifically proven you can lower your blood pressure by sitting in silence and focusing on your breathing. So it's got to be healthy for us. Science has proven that. But you touched on one thing. There are a lot of people in the world who don't have the same God as I do. And that's okay. If they ever want to be introduced to my God, I'll be happy to do it, but that's okay. Uh, but I think everybody, even when people say, "Well, I don't have a faith in anything," uh, it's the old adage: you have faith in gravity because when things are up, they're gonna fall. So we all have faith in something. We all, if we really think about it, we all know there is something bigger than us out
Mhm.
there. Um, so whether it's faith in my God or faith in something bigger, just something bigger, there's something controlling us. And it's done a pretty good job so far for most of us. So I think when we try to control things, there he comes. We try to control things is when things for most of us get messed up.
Mm.
It's that, for me, it's the ego. Edging God out is what ego stands for to me. And a lot of people say, well, but you're so humble. I said, we all have an ego.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just creeps in. And I always have to take a step back and go, oh my gosh, it's my ego. I'm edging God out. And that's not where I want to live.
Mhm. Mhm. That's it's such a wonderful description of it too. It's something that I imagine that when you share it that way for people, they can then realize, oh, I'm so wrapped up in whatever the thing is or whatever the survival is that I can't really see beyond my own pain, or I can't see beyond my own desire, my own thing. So that's very powerful. Want to be sensitive to your time and our listeners' time as well. If you had to give a piece of advice to someone that maybe it's a version of your past self, maybe it's someone who is in a leadership role or trying to grow in their own leadership or business, what piece of advice would you give that you've shared so many nuggets of incredible wisdom, but what piece of advice would you give for someone who might need that piece of advice? And it could even be a path version of you.
I think it's spending time every day in silence. I think that is so important for all of us, but yet very few of us do it. And I think no matter whether you're an entrepreneur, no matter whether you have um, a business, you have a W-2 job, or you're unemployed, um, spending that time in silence will bring you the peace, and everything else just falls into place. It's just so simple, and we make it so complicated.
Mm. Yeah. The urge is to fill that silence with everything but silence.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I love that you brought up living in the present, because for many years that was very hard for me. Because my personality is, I'm a planner, I'm a strategist, I'm a solutioner. For those of us who, my profile, my Colby profile is, I'm a quick start. So I'm constantly creating and thinking. And for those of us like me, it's a very intentional thing to live in the moment, and very intentional to focus on silence. And some people find it easier to do than others. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If we would live in every moment, just think how amazing the world would be. If you lived in every moment and realized this is a moment that I can make the world a better place, I, I can't imagine a better way to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's that combination of bliss and awe, because you were living in the moment. You're literally looking around going like, how is it possible that there is the wind blowing or the sun shining the way it is, and the warmth I feel on my skin, or the love from a little animal, or like, it's a profound thing. And most of us spend our lives missing out on what's right in front of us.
Yeah. Today, the day we're filming this, happens to be Dick Van Dyke's 100th birthday. And I would just love to ask him, because I've watched a lot of Dick Van Dyke. I don't know him personally, of course, but the things I've watched where he is always smiling and dancing, and I bet he is one of those people that lives in the moment. I have this philosophy where, after my quiet time in the morning, yeah, there's days I go around my house dancing, and there's nothing's gone, but it gets me started and going, thank you for this day. And I think you hit the nail on the head. If we all just live in the moment and appreciate the moments, life is wonderful.
Yes, I love that you pointed to someone who's 100 years old. Number one, I love that you've iterated it that way. It definitely, I too am a future thinker, and I find too that if it comes back to the appreciation in the moment, it's a much more peaceful place, because then we're not trying to make the future we want happen. Well,
Yes.
I can easily say this has been so grounding and wonderfully refreshing, and I appreciate you, and our listeners, I'm sure, will appreciate being able to reach out to you. You have a website, www.abs-core.com, and you are also on LinkedIn as Sandy Moll. Sandy, and then Moll is your last name. So people can reach you at your website, on LinkedIn, and gain more from your wisdom, your experience, all the nuggets you have to share, and your advising or coaching, and anything you can offer. So thank you so much for being with us. It's been
Well, thank you, Kari.
No problem.